We're going to talk today about the birth of new languages, pidgins and creoles, that arise from contact between two or more languages for a prolonged period of time. Let's begin by defining what a pidgin is. When two or more groups of people speaking mutually unintelligible languages come into contact on a relatively regular basis, they need a common language, a lingua franca, to communicate. They may use a third language that is not native to either of them. Or they may develop a simplified linguistic system which draws on some grammar and vocabulary from both of their native languages. Whichever system they use, this simplified language is called a pidgin. Pidgins are not native to any speakers. They're always acquired as second languages, and they're always used as lingua francas. Unlike established languages, pidgins are not learned in the classroom. They're picked up in the process of communicating and figuring out the best way to convey one's meaning in interaction when you don't speak the other person's language and they do not speak yours. A lot of modern pidgins and creoles, which we will address a little later in this lecture, are based on dominant languages that are not native to any of the speakers in the group. Such dominant languages tend to be the languages of colonial powers. Because pidgin users are interested in communicating their meaning, not in grammatical perfection, and they are essentially naturalistic second language learners, the forms they use tend to be grammatically simplified. The vocabularies of pidgins are limited and mostly drawn from all source languages. True pidgins are used only for basic functions, bargaining in the market, conveying basic info, and other typical transactions. Pidgins evolve gradually. Their first ontogenetic stage is a jargon. We can hardly even call this stage a system. The vocabulary in this period of development is extremely limited, and gestures are often needed to supplement or clarify the meaning expressed in words. The grammatical features are not stable. In other words, sometimes the speaker may, for example, use plural nouns, but not at other times. Sometimes a verb may be marked by a past tense marker from one source language, another time from another source language, and yet another time have no marker at all. The range of functions is pretty limited. Maybe a buyer and a seller can use a jargon to bargain at the market. But as such bargaining interactions recur and more people engage in them and extend them beyond negotiating how much should be paid for, say, a bunch of onions or a bag of rice, the vocabulary expands and it stabilizes. The whole groups of people now start using a particular mutually understood word or phrase or indicate their price offer or negotiation in a particular way. The grammatical features stabilize as well. Now, there is a consistent way to pluralize nouns in the right way and in the wrong way. At this stage, speakers who commonly use the pidgin would know, for example, that to express the idea has gone, they need to use the phrase done go and not been go. The latter means went. And as the vocabulary and grammar expand, allowing for the expression of more nuances, the language functions expand as well. The buyer and the seller may now not only negotiate the price, for example, but chit-chat about the weather and their families in a limited but productive way. Nevertheless, this stage of a stable pidgin is still not native to anyone in particular. But the process of expansion and development continues. Expanded pidgins have quite sophisticated vocabularies and complex grammars that may, nevertheless, be still more regular and less redundant than any of the source languages. The system, and now it is definitely a system, is now essentially identical to any other language in its functions. People can still engage in basic transactions in it, just like you do when you buy a cup of coffee and a Danish at a Starbucks. But they can also joke, tell stories, argue, gossip, make puns, write poems, fight with a neighbor or significant other. You name it. Just like you do in your daily life, even if you don't write poems. The only difference is that even expanded pidgins have no native speakers. The final step in the evolution of a new language is the step at which it is acquired by babies in the community as their native tongue. Many linguists argue that this step may not be necessary, that adults participate in the creation of creoles, that is what these new languages are called, as much as native-speaking children do. Indeed, strong evidence exists to suggest that it is the case. After all, these babies acquire their native language, a Creole language, from being immersed in the community of people who already speak it. Creoles have the same richness of vocabulary and grammar that any other non-Creole language also has. They also possess the same levels of grammatical complexity, including creativity, productivity, redundancy, and a range of functions. In fact, the only reason we're able to identify languages as Creole is that they are relatively new information and their evolution has been documented. What we consider non-Creole languages, English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, Japanese, Russian, Arabic, Italian, etc., 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 may also very well have Creole or Creolized origins. We just don't have the same observational data for them as we do for, say, Creole of Sierra Leone, or Hawaiian Pidgin English, or Papiamento of Aruba and Curacao, or Nigerian Pidgin English, and so on. Here's an excerpt of the Bible written in Creole, the lingua franca and a de facto national language of the Western African nation of Sierra Leone. This is not a legally official language, yet quite a lot of publications exist in it. Try to read a few lines of the text to yourself. You will see that even though reading this text is not easy, if you articulate the words aloud to the best of your ability, you will recognize some of them as similar to English. That is because Creole is an English-based Creole. Now that you have given it a little read, let's try and listen to how this text sounds.
The good news about Jesus Christ where Matthew write. Matthew chapter 1. Now Jesus Christ infamble them from Abraham in term the wire. Jesus Christ na one pan David in grand pikin them. And David na one pan Abraham in grand pikin them. Abraham born Isaac, Isaac born Jacob, Jacob born Judah, and Judah in brother them. Judah born Perez and Zerah, na Tamar na bin the mama. And Perez born Hezron, Hezron born Ram, Ram born Aminadab, Aminadab born Nashon, Nashon born Salmon, Salmon born Boaz, Boaz in mama be named Rehab, Boaz born Obed, Obed in mama be named Ruth, Obed born Jesse, Jesse born David when na been king.
As you can see, while some words are clearly identifiable as having their origin in English, the language is quite different in structure. It is indeed an independent language. Next, we're going to look at the history of Creole languages.